Excel Language School. A real passion for learning.
Hi, it's David from the Excel Language School again, and I'm here to talk about a Task 2 IELTS essay. Now, Task 2 is the second of two essays that you have to write if you are taking the IELTS test, and it is the longer of the two essays. It should be about 250 words long, and it is worth about 2/3 of your total grade. And so we recommend usually that the students should spend about 40 minutes working on it, and that should include a minute or two thinking and planning before you start writing, and then a few minutes at the end where you go back and read what you wrote and maybe find some mistakes that you made and correct them. And today's question was, you have 40 minutes to answer the question. Some people think Vietnam's future will be better than the present. Others are not so sure. Discuss both sides and give your opinion. And again, that's supposed to be 250 words, and if you go a little over 260, 265, that's great. But if you start to write longer than that, maybe your grade will go down instead of up. So longer is not always better. Now, one of the problems that my students have, and this essay today we're going to look at has, is that it gets off to a slow start and the student has some unnecessary words at the beginning. And the reason that happens, students tell me, is that when the student starts, they think, oh my God, I have to write 250 words. That's so long. What am I going to say? And so they start out putting some extra words that they don't need. And then what often happens is they get to the end and they found out that they've written too much, but maybe they don't have time to go back and edit their work and take out the unnecessary words at the beginning. So what I'm going to talk about today is that you have to read the question carefully and just answer the question. Don't start talking about subjects that are not connected to the question. Now, you may remember that the question was about Vietnam's future, but the student wrote, the world is changing rapidly and Vietnam is one of the countries making progress. Now, we are not supposed to write about the world, we're only supposed to write about Vietnam. So, of the first 12 words the students wrote, 10 of them are off topic. And so I crossed them out and I told the student that he could just start the essay by saying Vietnam is making progress, because the essay is supposed to be about Vietnam. Now, at the end of the first paragraph, student makes a mistake that I see often with the modal verb. The student wants to talk about the opinion that they have about the future, and the student uses the word would, but the student should really use the word will. Will is correct because you're talking about what your opinion is, your strong opinion about what will happen in the future. Would is something that we use more often when we're talking about things that will not happen in the future. That is what they call unreal situations. Like, for example, the quality of life in Vietnam would be better if there were less air pollution. But there's a lot of air pollution, so this is an unreal situation, so you have to use would. But in this situation, the student should use the modal verb will. And in the next paragraph, the student confuses two words which are very similar: prospect and aspect. And prospect is a noun which often means something which might happen in the future, but aspect is really a fancy word that means the same thing as part. So if you talk about, for example, the aspect of his life, you are really saying the part of his life. Now, right after that, the student tries a difficult structure, and I don't believe it quite works. The student writes, from economics to transport, to entertainment and other top priorities. The vocabulary is quite good and the grammar is not wrong, but I think it's a little confusing, and I recommended that the student use a simpler structure, which is I recommended the student write including economics, comma, transport, comma, entertainment, comma, and other top priorities, full stop. Now, moving on to the second page of the student essay, the writing is generally quite good, but the student makes one or two mistakes, including the student writes the following sentence: serious issues that the authorities haven't solved out yet. Now, solved out is actually not a phrasal verb in English. I think that maybe the student, again, got two different phrases sort of mixed up, and you can use the word solve a problem, or you can use the phrasal verb sort out a problem, but the student sort of mixed them up and came up with solved out, which is not a phrasal verb in English. So I recommended the student remember to use one or the other, but not to use this phrase again. Now, the student deals with a lot of different problems that Vietnam has in this paragraph, and I think the writing is very good, but I felt the students could use a few linking words. For example, in the second sentence, the student talks about unemployment, but in the third sentence, the student talks about agriculture. So I really felt that the beginning of the beginning of the third sentence, they needed a linking phrase, maybe, for example, in addition, or not only that, but. Also on the subjects of linking words, in the same paragraph, I felt that the student could use linking words at the beginning of another sentence. And this was a sentence where the student was writing about the poor in Vietnam and changes to writing about the rich. And when you're changing from an opposite, from poor to rich, a linking phrase like on the other hand is always good. And the last paragraph of the student essay I felt was quite good, clear, simple, easy to read. I had one or two suggestions about words, but the student's choice of words did not obscure the meaning. So I thought, generally speaking, the last paragraph was quite good. So I gave this student a 6.5 band score, and I think this student is in quite a good position to get at least that level, or maybe even higher on the actual exam. And so, if you are interested in improving your IELTS writing or any part of your English, we urge you to come down to the Excel Language School. The information about our phone number, our email, our address, our website should be below in the information box. And I look forward to talking to you again soon about IELTS writing.
Excel Language School. A real passion for learning.